Hello, everyone, and welcome to Phoenix Gaming. I'm Nick Henning, and today we're doing something, again, a little bit different. This is the semifinals of Ticket to Ride, which ostensibly doesn't mean anything special, except for I'm the person that's playing in this game. This is a pretty heartbreaking loss for me. I'll just go ahead and spoil that right now. You obviously know that I don't go on to play the finals or win this event or anything like that, but it was a weekend. Well, we're gonna start the video. And I'll tell you just how good my mindset was coming into this game. You could call it arrogance, you could call it confidence, you can call it I don't know, you could call it just good vibes or whatever. But I really felt like this was my weekend to win, and I just felt like I was completely on a roll. And things got messy right from the very get-go for me. So I'm going to go through this game. I'm going to talk about kind of the strategy. Sorry, gentlemen, but I'm going to cover you. It's just a little bit distracting. I'm going to talk about the strategy. I'm going to talk about my thinking about it, so you'll have sort of a little bit of more personal narrative and impact on it here. And let's get into it. So we get dealt out our initial tickets, and my starting tickets are heartbreaking. You want to see something pretty exciting in this game. And I'll come back to my and everyone's experience level at this table. I think coming into this game and how that actually changed my psychology of like what I was doing. But I'll also tell you that the tickets that I had a 5-point ticket. I don't know the routes well enough to tell you what it goes to where, but 5-point ticket somewhere middle of the country, and then like a 10-point ticket from like Winnipeg down south or something like that, and then like an 7 or 8-point ticket out on the East Coast. And so one bit of advice that I had heard, one strategy that had been suggested, was perhaps to just go and basically ignore your tickets. Just play 6 routes the whole way, completely burn your tickets. And I would have done that kind of weird strategy had I drawn the 5 ticket and like the 4 ticket. I would have been on board to try something just bananas like that. Especially how exciting that would be in the semifinal. However, I didn't really feel right kind of burning like 15 points because of that ticket on the East Coast. So instead what I did was I sort of grabbed the short ticket, the 5 ticket, and the ticket on the West, and I sort of figured I would run a really long route kind of along the West Coast, was sort of my plan here. And I'm not feeling good at this point in time. Yellow is my color. Rebecca was here and had she claimed yellow first, or it was random. I think it was she was first player or something like that. And so I don't know if she got to choose a color or if the colors were randomly assigned, but yellow is my color. So I already was just kind of feeling off vibes, had a really rough ticket. And I'm really trying to make sure that I am thinking about what it is that I can do to make this game work. And I know that if everyone else meets their tickets, I've lost. And so what I really need for everyone at this table to do is not meet their tickets. I need this game to end before anyone else can meet all of their tickets. That's a tall order. I'd had that advice because, my experience with Ticket to Ride is somewhat limited, but I definitely heard the advice of just like, be the person who blitzes the end of the game. And I was on board to do that. That was the thinking. That was the plan. But to get all 3 other players to not meet their tickets is a lot harder than having like 1 or 2 of them stumble, and then you're basically hoping for a heads up situation here. So I'm feeling a little rough at this point in time. And we are just starting off the game by all the players drawing cards. You saw that Rebecca and Loyd there kind of scooped up the oranges, which to me maybe suggested that there was sort of like a Duluth plan there, kind of that middle. I can't see the city names so well, so it's Duluth to Salt Lake. Nope, not Salt Lake City. Helena. What is that one like in the left side that connects to everything? Like right in the middle left side of the screen that Duluth connects to. That 6 orange train right there. I'm thinking that one of them is kind of heading that way, and we start this game with a pretty, from what I understand, kind of traditional, just like drawing piles and piles of cards. The advice that I received going into this game is it's going to feel dirty, it's going to feel weird, but essentially what you really want to be doing is just putting as many cards into your hand as possible and then play out all things sort of consecutively. Like you are just going to go and play and play and play and play. And the reason for that is that by like collecting and playing, you give other players more opportunities to block you. So you have more control over your route if you are collecting all the cards and then kind of playing them out in pieces. Further, because of the way the drawing rules work, generally drawing 2 off the top is the advice that I got. Just keep drawing 2 off the top because you're likely to draw randoms. The only exception that I personally saw in doing that is if you know you're going to complete a certain route, particularly a 6 route, and those cards are on play, then you're going to want to go ahead and grab those. So we're all kind of doing this blitz, and Loyd is the first one to kind of break parity here by placing the Houston, New Orleans path, which is a pretty nasty blocking path for anybody, or connecting path for anybody who's running basically a southern route, LA, maybe to New York or something like that is viable. But apparently that Houston, New Orleans connection there is very important because otherwise you kind of have to like get through, you know, that like Oklahoma, Arkansas region of the board, which just kind of sucks, is really clogged up. It's just a lot slower than kind of taking those 4, 5, 6 trains that you can going from sort of the south or the west to the east coast there. So I'm assuming that Loyd at this point, you know, knows essentially that he is going for that. We continue just drawing cards off the deck here. I don't think I've even looked at most of my cards at this point in time. I'm trying to stay so disciplined to the idea of I'm just here to kind of like ruin things that I am just drawing cards. At one point, Cliff tells me, "Nick, man, you're stressing me out. Please take a look at the cards in your hand." The reason I don't really care at this point in time is that I know I need a lot of cards to make the route run. And so I don't really feel like I'm going to get much of an edge by collecting certain colors of cards because I know that I'm kind of run a rainbow. My plan in trying to end the game as fast as possible is to just get cards, and then figure out how to make them work. So at this point, I think I actually pick up my cards for like the first time really in the game. And I think in part I did that because Loyd had done that Houston, New Orleans thing. So I said, okay, people are going to start playing trains now. I should start paying a little bit more attention. And this cycle of drawing cards is going to continue for quite a while, I think, until we essentially hit the bottom of the deck. And you see that everyone's just kind of like holding this massive grip of cards there. Let's talk about preparation. Yeah, so you know the way this worked is the night before the morning of this game, Saturday night. The game's on Sunday morning. They do the drawing for the events. I got into 2 events because I won 2 games. I unfortunately pulled Carcassone and Ticket to Ride, which were 2 of the bottom 3 game choices that I'd hoped to draw for this tournament. And I chose Ticket to Ride because I despise Carcassone. I'm not very good at it. Incidentally, Rebecca, who is sitting to my right, but your left if you're looking at the screen, is the starting player there, won the Carcassone game. And she did like a fist pump when Ticket to Ride was her announced game, which to me says, okay, I mean, a player who plays Carcassone, maybe a gamer who enjoys some of those like lighter games. And so she probably has played Ticket to Ride gazillion times. I'm already quite worried about her. Loyd also seemed pretty excited about getting this game. He's playing raw. And then Cliff, in the bottom left there, who ultimately will go on to win this game, was in the same boat that I was. You know, certainly we'd both played Ticket to Ride before, but we didn't really know it. We got a crash course from a couple folks that sort of gave us their opinions on how to play the game. And then I believe both of us went and played a couple games on Board Game Arena. I think I did more seeking out of coaches, and Cliff did a little bit more playing. But the idea is that we, you know, really kind of crash coursed ourselves into learning this game and understanding what it is that we are trying to accomplish here. It, by the way, was with Cliff that I had that one person tell me the advice of just ignore your tickets and only run 6 trains. I'd really considered it, honestly, given the hindsight 2020, knowing that I lose here. I wonder if I should have gone for it. I think probably not. It seems a little sus given the amount of points that I would have lost. But it is really, really difficult to say. Loyd kind of continues this connection here. When he plays those 4 oranges, was convinced he was going to play New Orleans upwards, but actually he ends up playing in the middle of the country here, which says a lot of things to me abruptly. He's got Houston, New Orleans. He's got that 4 train in the middle of the country, and I can't remember actually, because I've been talking a lot, if we've seen it yet. But Loyd is the only player this game who draws extra tickets, which I'll maybe go into more later if we see him draw tickets. But he might have already drawn them right from the beginning of the game and said, I'm really committed towards doing extra routes. And I think he also even kept an extra route at the beginning. So I think he's got like 4 routes, whereas most of us have 2. Seeing that he plays in the middle here, I kind of suspect that he has like a spider webby, networky kind of series of routes to connect. And I was told in my training that the center of the map strategy is pretty tough to pull off in the base game of Ticket to Ride. And so right off the bat, I'm seeing Loyd making some pretty decisive plays kind of in the middle of the country. He seems like he really knows what he's doing. But I'm also saying to myself a little bit like, maybe I don't need to be quite as worried about his game plan here, because even if he has it together, even if he's playing with confidence, maybe he just doesn't have the same problem that I did, just some kind of awkward tickets that you need to make work in one way or another. Rebecca opens up by then going Miami up to Charlotte there. And so, that could mean any number of things, but she basically starts marching up the East Coast. The East Coast has a lot of like 2 train spots that kind of require you to go all the way up there. So that's a little bit of a slow start, but the East Coast also lets you kind of connect the South and the North where you get those 5-6 trains. So, at the end of the day, you obviously don't just get to run whatever trains you like. And just to go a little bit more into the idea of that is you get essentially double penalized for playing short routes. First of all, short routes are worth fewer points, right? 1 card worth 1 point for a 1 train, 2 cards worth 2 points for a 2 train, but 6 cards are worth 15 points for a 6 train, which means every card is worth 2.5 points instead of 1 point. Further, you essentially go a longer distance, right? That generally means you're able to connect more spaces across the board, and adds more trains to the longest road or longest train network or whatever it's called. And you see that we've only played a couple trains on the board before we go through a reshuffle here. We know there's a couple extra oranges and pinks in the deck because that is what Rebecca and Loyd played in order to place their roads. But other than that, we know that the deck is pretty thin here. And I actually have a sense of like, I think there were a couple wilds that got played or got shuffled in. So I'm again thinking right now, like I'm definitely going to be drawing off the top. I know that there's a handful of wilds in there that I want to try to scoop up before kind of other players get to. But I'm also not holding many wilds at this point in time. If I remember correctly, I had maybe only 1 wild going into the flip here. And I think there's 12 or 16 wilds in the deck, which tells me that other players are holding far more wilds than I am, which is not, again, a great place emotionally to be at this kind of early stage of the game where we're rushing out. I can't remember exactly what happened with my hand at exactly what points in time, so I don't know why I'm completely frozen here. I must be thinking about whether I want to scoop 2 oranges or 2 off the top. Like I said, I think that there's wilds in there, but I also maybe don't want pinks or something. I'm not sure. Nah, that doesn't make sense because I ultimately want to go down the West Coast, which does have pink trails there. So I might be considering something along those lines of like what colors I think there are in the deck. And it looks like it looks like I claimed that white road. Oh, the reason I claimed the white one is because I know that I'm connecting Winnipeg and Calgary up north of there. And I'm decently far away from doing it at this point in time. I remember sort of thinking that I either need to keep that white 6 train as an option or the blue 4 train because I need to connect to Winnipeg. The yellow there is the thinking that I'm going to be connecting Helena over to Seattle. And one thing that I was told is, by taking cards of certain colors off the board, you're sort of indicating to people what you're doing. And I think it's fair to look at this game and say, Nick took a white, Nick took a yellow. He's going to be up in the Northwest, even though he hasn't played any trains yet. It's a little bit bold to claim that. I mean, it could certainly be kind of like down in that Santa Fe region. There's a 5 white and a 5 yellow there. But, you know, it's fair to sort of like make some assumptions about like what's happening based on what people have picked up. Whether that changes your strategy or not, I think completely depends on your tickets. And what your general game plan is going from that point forward. But that's what you can see from me sort of like indicating in my long decision to draw cards there. I think I'm realizing that as folks are playing trains, my goal, you know, really is to kind of connect to the West Coast there. I want to try to run as many 6 trains as possible, because I know even though I ended up taking a few tickets, I'm not going to run just a 6 train route. The only way I'm going to win is by that increased efficiency of playing out trains, getting those, you know, 2.5 points or 2 points per card rather than 1 point per card for playing those bigger, longer routes. Going back to training the night before, you know, I basically got a crash course from folks on what they think sort of the different like tier strategies are in Ticket to Ride. There's kind of the like, you know, just build tickets and connect them everywhere, or make really long routes. And then also sort of the like go so fast, or specifically like take routes to block other players, to like run the game really short. I wonder if Cliff here saw that I picked up that yellow, got nervous, and said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and play 2 wilds to connect Helena to Seattle right here. I have a really good poker face, so if I am bothered by that, I don't show it. I think that ultimately is okay for me, but a little bit annoying. I can use those yellows on the bottom part of the board from El Paso to Oklahoma City. And I also see that 4 yellows get pulled out of the deck there. So I know that the odds that someone else is going to be playing El Paso, Oklahoma City with me holding a grip of yellows is pretty low. So I'm now thinking like, how can I'm going to do a whole loop, kind of like a U around that side of the board there. And if I remember correctly, Denver, El Paso is my crappy ticket, my 5-point ticket or 4-point ticket maybe. And so my goal there is to connect El Paso to Oklahoma City and Oklahoma City to Denver, rather than kind of doing the straight route, doing sort of the zigzag with the longer pass there to score some additional points. So Loyd must have, I think it was like his second action of the game or something like that, because I think we're too late in the game that he does it now. Well, maybe I'm not correct about that. Here I go playing 6 black cars, and I'm assuming I'm playing El Paso, LA. I guess I could be playing up north, but El Paso, LA allows me to run exactly the strategy I was just talking about, right? That I would then have the 5 yellows running up to Oklahoma City there. I was holding those blacks in my hand, and I wasn't sure if that was essentially ultimately the path that I was going to go on. But now seeing that I'm going to like do the white train up top, kind of hook all the way down the coast, I jump all the way to the bottom and play that 6-1 in LA, El Paso. Another reason that I'm rushing this is because I think Cliff is on the west side of the board right now, so maybe he's interested in going south. Loyd already indicated that he might be connecting in the south with that Houston, New Orleans play, unless he's just playing spoiler, which is certainly possible. The only person I'm not worried about going there is Rebecca, but I want to make sure I grab that route. I don't want to be doing the 2-3 routes, even though it seems like it's kind of the same thing. It's 2 card plays that each score 4 points rather than 1 card play that scores 15 points. And you see that Cliff here is executing exactly the same strategy that I did in terms of like grabbing those 6 trains. That's the advice that both of us were given. So we're just listening to what folks tell us to do. And he connects El Paso to Houston here, which immediately makes me very happy that I connected that LA El Paso route right there. Whew. There are a pile of oranges in play, and it was interesting because folks at the beginning grabbed oranges and then don't seem to be so interested in them now. I wondered at a certain point if like I should have kind of moved into grabbing that Duluth 6 route myself, using those blacks to connect like Winnipeg down to Duluth and then doing something else. But at this point, I'd already kind of made my plan of like where I was hooking around. And I think that the cards that I had were not terribly friendly for what I wanted to accomplish there. Notice also how incredibly thin that deck is. Like Scott's messing with that card. Scott's the GM who's running this game. And he is just holding essentially the one card there and then is about to reshuffle a very, very tiny little deck that's going to put in some black cards, some green cards, and some yellow cards. So this is something that I'm definitely thinking about, right? On the left side of the board, green is a 5 root, yellow is a 3 root, and I might need more yellow cards for my 5 root. I think I'm actually a little bit short still at this point in time, or maybe either way. Certainly a route that is long and connected there. I'm not sure whose connection they're talking about. Actually, Winnipeg Little Rock is me. that's who am I kidding? That's my 11-point ticket. That's my Winnipeg to something else. And you can see how ridiculous my plan is of going around the left side of the board rather than going down the center. I was told that going down the center is death. I, looking at it now, think that I could do something like Winnipeg, Duluth to whatever that mountainous one is. I'm shameful U.S. geography wise about what that's supposed to be. I think it's something in Wyoming. I think we had a conversation about it and we were like, pointed out that it's like not supposed to be there like at all. Cause I think Cliff is from around there. Then I could take that like 5 route over to Chicago, the 4 route over to Denver. So I could have done a zigzag down the middle of the board, scoring those 4s and 5s. That certainly would have been an option. But Loyd kind of playing in the middle there made me a little bit nervous that I wasn't going to grab every single one of those zigzags. And so maybe that plan is not horrible. And I am looking at the map at this point in time. And part of the reason I haven't committed yet to making some of my other plays is that I say, well, I can do a zigzag down the board, grabbing these 4s and 5s instead of going down essentially the left side, which, you know, is 3s, 4s, 5s, but also a 1, you know, between Seattle and Portland there, a little bit awkward. And there's just, you know, not to my experience level, enough knowledge of what the tickets are in the game to look at what people have connected here and say, oh, this is definitely what's going on. Let's go back to talk about Loyd and tickets. So is he holding 3 there? I think he is holding 3 there. 1, 2. Yeah. So this is the turn where he draws tickets. And the reason you see me laughing there is because I was like, man, he only has 2 routes on the board and he's essentially drawn his cards. He knows exactly what he's playing out to and where he's going to be going with those cards, with those tickets, so that he says, you know what, I need to score some more points along the way, which I thought was a really, really bold choice to make at this stage. If you're going to draw some extra tickets, often you'll see people do it after they've connected their networks, so they're feeling a little bit more confident, have a sense of the flow of the game. Or you'll see them do it at the beginning so they can make their game plan around what it is that they're drawing. I assume, and I don't remember what Loyd's tickets ended up being, but I assume that he has multiple paths that he can do to connect what he's trying to connect. And so he's trying to think to himself, which way do I want to go? I have some extra time, so I'm going to grab another ticket to essentially give myself the space to do that. And one thing that I appreciate about this game, this particular play of this game, is that all of us know that we need to win this game. The only person who's advancing to the finals is going to be the person who wins this game. Rebecca runs the 5 along the top there, and that puts me into overdrive mode. I'm very nervous now that she's going to come and she's got basically like a go up the East Coast and then across the North strategy. I know that I need to come out of Winnipeg, so all of a sudden I'm getting very nervous that I need to start playing my cards. And also, as I said, the deck is super tiny at this point in time, and I roughly know what cards are in there and what I do or don't want to draw. So that's going to impact my choices in terms of the fact that, like, I probably don't need greens at this stage, right? I'm saying to myself, like, hey, I've already got a plan. I know exactly what it is that I'm doing. I just go ahead and I will play out these 5 yellows because that's definitely going to happen. I don't think I'm super worried. Well, that's not true because I think that the yellows that Cliff played got reshuffled into the deck. So at this point, folks are drawing back into those yellows again. And I'm worried that maybe Cliff is interested in playing that 5 yellow spot. Rebecca continues kind of on the building connection here by playing 6. Again, I'm like, whoo, okay, like it's now or never. We're at Winnipeg. This is very, very concerning. And all of a sudden, Rebecca's gameplay of kind of going on the East Coast, which looks uncontested, right? She can connect herself there, and running along the top there looks strong. That's a big long route, and I'm pretty sure there's like a up north, like Vancouver to Montreal, and then like a Montreal to Miami. And those are like, that's like a 20 points and 15 points or something like that. I mean, I'm making up numbers because I don't know the routes, and I'm making up routes because I don't know the routes, but I'm relatively sure that something like that exists in the game. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, Rebecca is holding maybe 35 points in ticket scoring here, and I'm holding 16 or 15 points in tickets. Just further kind of like codifying what it is that needs to happen. I go into the tank here, and for a lot of my friends and a lot of my games, I will probably be the quickest player. In a game that is so light, I spend so much time. I'm easily the slowest player at this table. Because I'm just trying to think of any which way I can eke out those little edges. I'm not ready to commit yet to where it is that I'm going to go. Does it make sense for me to play the 6 white up north? Do I think that Rebecca has 6 white cards? I do want to play that 6 train. It doesn't terribly help me with my actual route of what I need to connect, but it is just about scoring those 15 points. And a lot of the other 6 routes have been kind of snapped up, with the exception of the ones that run across the middle of the board, like that. The ones that run out of Duluth, right, either going east or west. And that city is going to pay me $1, by the way, every time I say that name. And that means that I'm going to be more limited in terms of what points that I can score. I'm still at this point considering whether I can go to Portland, run that 6 train over into Salt Lake, 5 across. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm going down the West Coast or zigging down the West Coast. But I really struggled to draw blue cards. And I think this is actually what I'm freezing about right here is like, do I want to put 4 blue cards into connecting the unnamed city and Winnipeg, or am I going to play these 6 whites, commit to that now? I don't know what my black card situation is at this point in the game. Obviously, I played 6 of them out, but I do think I drew a bunch of them. So I could use the 4 to connect Winnipeg to Duluth, but I don't think I have enough oranges to run the plan that I want to run either. So this is why you see me just kind of like sitting here forever. And now that I'm watching it, I feel bad for these other players who are just like waiting for me to make a decision about like where I'm playing when all the rest of them are quite quick when it comes to their turns. You know, the other thing too is I know that if I get blocked in any kind of way, it's over. Like I need to thread the needle here of getting essentially the perfect moves, the perfect places, so that I am not the one who ends up holding the bag at the end of the day. Again, the game plan is for everyone else to be holding the bag. We'll just wait for Nick to play. That guy takes forever. Yeah, I wish I could remember exactly what was in my hand. It's been a couple months. Like I said, emotionally, this is going to be the hardest, episode for me to air because it's close. And I really could have been there, and I really felt like it was there. So, this is part of the reason why I'm really slowing down in this moment. I'm trying to make sure that I won't look back on this game and kick myself for the choices that I made. Because I know this is being videotaped, and I know I'm going to watch it. They posted this, and I watched it like 2 days later. And then my partner was making fun of me because I played Ticket to Ride on Board Game Arena like 2 or 3 times a day, every day for the week after this event, because I just needed to prove to myself that you could be as good as you wanted to be at this game. And at the end of the day, like, it's Ticket to Ride. You're going to draw some cards, you're going to connect some routes, and some players are going to, maybe block you or maybe not block you, or the way their routes are going just happen to be in the way, and you're going to draw the right trains or not draw the right trains, and that just has to be okay. I will say that I found Ticket to Ride to be a lot more enjoyable than I remember. I thought that it was deeper and more interesting than I thought it was going to be. And so I end up deciding I can do the opposite of what Rebecca does. If she plays the 4 blues, I can play the 6 whites. I've got time to decide it. And I think in order for me to do it, I would have had to use the very few random wild trains that I did have. So I draw off the top, and I must have drawn what I wanted. And I laughed because I'm immediately punished for drawing the black train there, which I do think I'll ultimately need. I'm thinking I'm going to need either 4 black trains to run Winnipeg to Duluth, or 4 black trains I can also use to go. Is it Calgary? Calgary to Seattle. That kind of 4 hook there that cuts the northwest corner. So I have a couple other black cards in my hand. I just draw a ton of black trains this game. And looking at, Loyd is a great player to have at the table, because he is showing the camera exactly what the juice is. That being said, what does it matter when we're looking at a 40 card deck, right? Like, our hands are all full of 20, 30 cards. We can see Cliff here is holding a lot of blues. Looks like some oranges and whites. So yeah, he I think is at this point holding enough blues that he can run that Portland Salt Lake City thing, which is pretty spicy for him. He grabs, that would be his third 6 train. I can't help but feeling, now that I'm watching this, I didn't think this at the time, that Cliff is very attentive to what it is that I'm doing, because when I picked up a yellow card, he played 6 yellow train. When I picked up a black card, he plays this 4 black train. And I could be wrong. Maybe what actually happens here is that Cliff is just nervous for the same reason that I was, that Rebecca goes to that location. And so he says, you know what, I'm willing to throw out the wild train rather than pick up a black card from the board right now to make sure that I connect there. To me, this sort of indicates that, hey, he's going to do this Duluth, Helena, whatever that actual spot is. Duluth and the unnamed city is going to be. And, me waiting there basically forces my hand. Cliff grabs one of the spots, Rebecca grabs the other. And so now I know exactly what it is that I'm doing. I'm going in that 6 white over the top there. And that means that it's good in a way. I don't think that either of the other players, except for maybe Cliff, are going to take that 6 white route. But maybe Cliff is going to take that 6 white route, right? Because he could be doing, because like I said, he had the same training that I did. He's just played 6s so far, right? 6, 6, and a 4. If he plays another 6, like it could be that he's holding all the cards. And so I go ahead and I connect that 4 train there. I figure, hey, worst case scenario, I'm going to do this 4 connector from Calgary over to Seattle, but I can do a 3 and a 1 if I absolutely need to. But I'm no longer zigzagging down the middle. Actually, I suppose part of the reason I did this too is because I can play the 4 from Calgary to the unnamed city, and I can kind of zig out of there. But at this point, like I'm committed. I have to go. I've delayed long enough. The plan can only be so perfect. Yeah. When you look at the scores right now, it's really interesting because I am in the lead. Sorry, not in the lead. Rebecca's in the lead. Having played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 routes. I'm in second place with 3 routes. Cliff's in third place with 3 routes, and Loyd has only played the 2, and he's kind of well behind. But Cliff, Rebecca, and I have all picked up some 6s. Cliff and I both have picked up 2. So I'm kind of looking at Cliff as one of the main contenders right now in this game. I'm also very worried, like I said, about Rebecca's kind of 35 point cards that I suspect that she has from her connection there. And I'm just not entirely sure when he plays this out over up top here. I'm amazed, right, by the extent of the network that Loyd is planning on doing this game. I think we will see that it is true, but he does end up biting off a little bit more than he can chew. And I didn't quite catch those cards that he revealed. Like, actually, let's see if I can go back just a smidge in the time, because it'd be nice to see what you got. Because Loyd is about to fan. So look in the bottom right of the screen, because he's about to fan his cards, and we can at least get a rough look of, yeah, he's going like south to the east coast. So there must be some other card that I missed in there that wants him to go kind of to the west coast. I think he's going to be doing kind of like a tree pattern or something like that. Cliff goes back to being not nervous. I guess he's not really afraid that anyone's going to take that 6 orange from him. And I suspect that means that Winnipeg might have been one of the cards that he needed to play. I think actually in retrospect, he ends up having Calgary as one of his locations, and he did indeed want to take the 6 white that I had played. So upon me seeing sort of the 4 blacks going there, when I said before that I wasn't worried, it's not that I wasn't worried. It's actually that I'm happy that Rebecca plays the 4 blues, because I wanted the 6 whites. So that ends up working out kind of in my favor in that fashion, right? That they filled it out and my hand is forced to play those cards there. Cliff is clearly closing in on his specific game plan, right? With grabbing that train there. He needs something very specific to connect his roots, which makes sense. I mean, you look at the west side of the board here, and there's a handful of grays, certainly, but there are not really red trains, yellow trains, or black trains that are really left anymore, unless you're kind of connecting Salt Lake City and whatever's north of Santa Fe. I think I'm about to pop off where I just start playing cards like crazy, and this is where, like, me having waited for a very long time to play cards is gonna pay off, right? Where I've collected all these cards, I've only played kind of these specific routes, and so I connect up north, knowing officially that I am going along the west coast here. I think the kind of decision point there is that I did not think anyone except for Cliff was contesting the west coast. And so there's double routes that go down there, the green pink and then the pink yellow. So I know that no matter what, I can kind of get there, right? There's no way that Rebecca is building like a whole U. I saw that Loyd built up in the east coast there, so he's got the kind of tree pattern that he's going for. And there we go, Cliff with the huge orange route. This is a really big deal. I think it puts him as the point leader. And certainly he's the most efficient at playing cards so far. I think at this point in time, I'm still really hoping that I can get the 6 blue. If I had been able to play the 6 blue connector there, I probably would have just gone out of order to play it because that's a lot of points. It's points that Cliff isn't going to take. And again, it's not like my route is very long. I'm just going an intentionally circuitous way so I can score additional points to get there. But I just could not draw blue cards this game for the life of me. Instead, I just take the boring play, keep connecting that route. Now everybody knows what I'm doing to connect, but I don't think anybody has the cards or even the incentive to really get in my way. And you generally see folks are at this point basically playing out their cards, right? Like Loyd is going to go ahead and just start connecting his route. Fortunately for him, he's relatively uncontested in the middle of the board here. So if he can actually manage to connect all 4 of those tickets, he's in really good shape. Problem is still that he's going to be taking, that play was a 5 train. That's great. And he played, 6 train the round before that went down to Miami. Also great. But now he's got a lot of little teeny stuff left. This is one of those things where I'm going to go into spoiler land. So Cliff goes ahead and he plays that 1 blue card. And this is the end of Rebecca's game. I played on one spot. She played on the other. Or Cliff played on the other. And she needs to go to Portland. or needs to connect to Seattle or something like that. She needs to connect one of them, Seattle or Portland, along the way there. I have no idea. Cliff has no idea. None of us had any idea that that's the case. I just looked at her face again when it happened, and she made a little bit of a face, but the poker face on this woman, if I had had any inclination that she was in trouble, is going to come into play much later. She then closes the gap to Calgary, and again, I don't know this at the time, but that's a really big deal for Cliff, who has a Calgary card in his hand. He's trying to connect Calgary to Salt Lake City. The things that you only know in the retrospect. So I scooped these yellow cards. I think the yellow cards are for me to get from LA to San Francisco. I had already burned out all my yellow cards, right, with that El Paso, Oklahoma City play. And I figure, pink cards are going to be maybe used in that Portland route if Cliff is going to play a green route. So I just need to be very cautious. Again, still kind of keeping the options open. The other thing I'm thinking with the pink cards is that at the end of my trip from Denver to Omaha, I could just kind of connect the path there if I need to. We go through the deck for like a 4th reshuffle or something crazy like that. It's a little bit thicker now, so the card counting of what's left in the deck is not as significant, but certainly I could get a sense of what there is and what there isn't going to be, right? Like, we have not played out a ton of blue cards, for instance, or a ton of pink cards, for instance. Like, they're not going to be those cards. So at this point where we're going into a deck like that, I've more looked at and paid attention to what roots have been played. Red roots, green roots, white roots, orange roots, but we've not played, like I said, those like pink roots, like pink. There's no pink root on this board that's covered right now. So people are just holding on to those cards. And that's something that's very cognizant for me as I'm considering going down the West Coast here. I don't even remember if I'm the one holding the pink cards, honestly. We'll have to see as I play them out. But I was struggling with something on the West Coast. I wanted to keep my options open, and I had maybe like 2 of the 3 colors, like yellow, green, pink, in some combination that was beneficial versus not. I'm not too concerned about being blocked at this point in time, but I don't want to be awkward in my pathing to the end, right? Like, it's I certainly feel like I'm going to connect at this stage of the game. I'm pretty convinced that Loyd is out. Again, not because I'm very experienced, but because of the advice that I get. Ultimately, that will end up being correct. I very much think that Rebecca is winning the game. She just seems like she has this like Mondo path that isn't going to be stopped, and that's a lot of endgame points. And Cliff just has a lot of points on board, so I'm very worried about him as well. Table talking wise, I don't know who the other players are at this table. I don't know their personalities all, but Cliff is talking like things are not going very well for him. I don't know if that's a ploy or not. It ends up not being a ploy. He ends up being a very honest gentleman. And just fun to be around. So he is talking like there's something that's gotten in his way. It's not really clear what it is, or even that like he can't get to a ticket. He's referring ultimately to Calgary, Salt Lake City, which is a 7-point ticket that he's going to end up missing out on. But he ends up claiming this 6 blue route that I'd kind of been hoping that I would get to claim, but I just literally never had the cards to make it happen. This is obviously really big for him. And now we can kind of see what he's doing to connect in the Southwest there. He becomes very blockable at this stage, right? The like route that gets him from Salt Lake City over to El Paso, if he starts getting to the Southwest or if he starts moving to the Southeast, is something that folks can really get in his way. So I think that's something that in a game with people who are maybe a little bit more experienced or a little bit more cutthroat than the players at this table, that'd be something that he should be very concerned about. Turns out, though, that we're all pretty focused on our own game plans. The only one who ends up making rude plays this game is me, and we'll get into it when it's there. I, by the way, am counting out the number of trains that I have left. What are the paths that I'm going to do? Because I know what I'm connecting. I think I'm pretty sure that I have like good cards to make it connect, but I'm also trying to figure out like when is the game going to end? So this is what you see me like counting. This is this many pieces. This is this. I play out this. And at this stage also, the reason I stopped to think is because by Cliff playing that 6 blue going in, it means I can do on the West Coast whatever I like. No one's going to stop me either way. So I'm just free to essentially play the trains that I want to. I choose playing over here to Little Rock first because I'm not sure what it is that Loyd is doing, and ultimately I need to connect Winnipeg to Little Rock. It's a little bit of a sad route, but hey, things have got to happen. Loyd gets nervous about whatever it is that Cliff is doing, and he ends up connecting to Salt Lake City. Maybe that's one of his cards, or maybe San Francisco is one of his destinations, given the huge amount of pinks that he's holding there. Actually, I don't think they mean anything, right? Yeah, I think he uses 2 pinks to connect Kansas City to St. Louis. But probably doesn't really use the rest in any kind of way, in a real kind of way. Rebecca's so fast with that one. She connects over to Seattle. She's so definitive that I'm like, oh, she has connected her like Seattle Montreal ticket, or whatever that is, some Mondo ticket that goes over there. Again, we don't know this at this point in time, but she actually needs to get to Portland. I think at this point, I'm ending up playing wilds on that green, even though I'm not really worried that someone else is going to take it, because there's no cards out there that I want to be drawing right now. I'm just going for the connect. I've got the pieces. I'm not worried about it. Loyd, I guess, actually is going to San Francisco. I think that's why he's leaning over to this side of the board. And I'm a little bit happy to see that, because I think that I'm not sure whether Cliff is kind of zigging back out or not. Oh, no. He is going all the way up to Portland, which, again, just so ambitious in what his roots are doing there. And there we go. That answers the question about having all those pink cards. Yeah, it makes me happy that I actually decided to play those greens, because the greens are not especially good in any other instance for me. And I like kind of how we played this game, where we claim some of these like premium, especially Cliff and I really claim these like premium routes in terms of the points, while Loyd and Rebecca were building kind of their networks out, right? Like Loyd actually has much bigger plans, but Rebecca is just on this like very, very direct pathing plan here. And Loyd goes ahead and kind of finishes his whole West Coast connection. And yeah, I mean, he's only a couple routes away, but he's got to connect Kansas City between. He's got to connect over to New York up there, and then he has to go south again. So just a couple blocks there, a couple like slower trains, and you're gonna see that's really gonna end up punishing him. It's getting very, very close to the end of the game at this point in time. You can see that I think I organized those in groups of 10. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. It's so hard to see on the camera. I think those are groups of 10. So I'm holding on to 13 trains there. And you can see my grip of cards is actually a holdable grip of cards at this point in time. If I can go to close the game at this stage, I do. But I think I need to draw some cards or play something. I just drew some cards, and I'm trying to decide what my next kind of action or sequence is going to be here. The only thing that I have left to do, I believe, is to connect Oklahoma City to Denver with the 4 reds, which I'm not sure that I have at this point in time. Because I think if I had them, I would play them. I don't think anybody else at the table is interested in making that route happen. But I am a little bit, I am thinking about it. Is this where the miserable part of this game happens? Nope, I draw some cards. So I took a yellow, which just means that I have some other yellows in my hand. I probably was drawing like a 3rd yellow there. And then 1 off the top, yeah. Yeah, that has to be 3 yellows, because I don't know. there's no reason why I would draw a yellow card except for to play on a 3 spot, I think. And I'm trying to decide at this point in time, like, what is it that I do? Who do I get in the way of? Both Rebecca and Cliff are in very good shape to build longest trains here. I'm also in pretty good shape to build longest train here. I actually kind of was thinking that I was not going to be the primary contender for it this game, but actually the sort of go all the way around the coast plan did work out. There's a decent chance that I can score those 10 points here. The problem that I'm definitely coming across is the awkward train cards. Like if I just had 4 reds, 5 whites, or 4 reds, 4 pinks, or 4 reds, 4 greens, I would just be blasting those out. But unfortunately, I end up having these kind of more awkward cards. I think because of the way the reshuffles worked, we see a lot of the same cards get cycled back in, and cards that the colors that are not played as much were a lot harder to draw. So those reds weren't played until Loyd essentially went down to Miami, but there's like no other red roots on the board that have been covered. So red and blue really were kind of the bane of my existence in this game in terms of having the right cards to connect pieces. And here Cliff indicates very, very clearly what his plan is, how he's connecting. I think we're about to hit the pain turn. This is the pain turn. I'm about to play a 3 root. I am just trying to end the game at this stage. I kind of have a sense of what cards it is that I'm going to play. And I play this 3 yellows and I choose to block Rebecca. Now, I made that play a lot faster than you would think that I was going to. But I made that choice because I really felt that she was winning. I really felt that she had an additional 15 points there, 35 points there in the connection, and that by doing that, she wouldn't get the 10 points of longest train. I'll kick myself for this decision forever because ultimately that's not what ended up happening in this game. And the other decision I was making was, do I block Cliff? Take those 3 and just throw them in like LA Phoenix and play on that route that he just did right there. I had thought for a bit, like, can I block both of them? And unfortunately, both of them were on those 3 train routes, like exactly at the time that they needed to be on them. I, at the time, had figured that Cliff was in trouble in terms of his routes. Rebecca had a lot of extra points in my mind. If you look at the scores on the board, and I had a sense of like, I just had this like, I don't know, third eye moment of like what Cliff's tickets looked like, what Rebecca's tickets looked like. And the thing is, I missed the fact that she needed to go to Portland. Because ultimately her tickets do end up being roughly what I said. But she was actually going for something crazy like 40 points in tickets or 38 points in tickets and needs to get to Portland to connect it. But if she doesn't, and I don't block her, like if I was correct in my read, which I wasn't, then she wins the game. Unfortunately, I ended up being wrong in the read, and Cliff is going to go on to win the game. And if I play those 3 trains right there, Cliff dies on the spot. He doesn't get longest train, which he'll almost certainly get. He doesn't get to connect even one of his last routes there. I think we're too close to the end of the game. I should have done it. I should have gotten in his way. Should have just respected the points on the board. Oh, it's brutal to watch. Hindsight is 2020, of course. I mean, you can't know in the moment. I did, in watching this, the commentators here do agree that they think Rebecca is winning. She's the only player who didn't show her tickets to the commentators, so they all know what we're looking at for tickets, but they don't know anything about what her tickets look like, and they think that she's winning. So, part of it is maybe just fear of the unknown, but obviously in my position, I have fear of the unknown everywhere. And again, to make a table read that is maybe something that you shouldn't be doing, but I definitely was, Cliff was talking like he'd lost the game, and I knew that wasn't true. But I did get the vibe, the very honest vibe, that he did think he was in trouble. And I had read that to be some ticket that connected maybe over to New Orleans. and that was what he was having trouble with. I did not realize that it was the Calgary thing that Rebecca and I had gotten in the way of. That really hadn't crossed my mind. Again, I think a lot of that comes with lack of experience of the tickets. I also figured but had hoped that Cliff didn't have the oranges. He played 6 oranges to connect Duluth to the unnamed city. So maybe it was just hard for him to finish. I didn't really think that was going to be the case at this stage in the game. He'd spent a turn just drawing a wild. And you can tell he's a lot more confident now as he stands up. He largely finishes connecting. If I can play 3 oranges here to block him, I would have. But I had my one chance to block. I chose the wrong player. So be it, right? I think what I really needed to realize was that blocking Rebecca took 10 points from her by not having her have the longest route. And the other thing is that I thought I would have the longest route. I kind of just, for some reason, I don't know. I thought that I had an opportunity to have longest route here, but I just kind of didn't realize that my 3 trains off to the side and then the 2 trains off to the side were going to become a problem when I compared to Cliff, who just ends up connecting everything. So I don't know. I mean, I think I knew that I wasn't getting longest train, and I was choosing between the players that had it. And I figured that 10 points off Rebecca was reasonable. But again, maybe I just need to realize that if she scores 35, like I said, I would have been okay. I would have been okay if she scored just 35, which is why I need to block her longest train. But if she gets 35 and longest train, it's nail in the coffin, immediately dead. But if I say to myself, look, if she has these Mondo routes, maybe she just wins anyway. When we get to the end of the game, let's look at the score. I can't remember if she actually would get there with those final bits here. And look at me, I'm on 1, 2, 3. Do I have enough? 4, 5, 6. Do I end this right now? Do I have 4 trains? If I do, I would immediately play it. So clearly I don't. Oh, I do. What was I thinking about? I think I was probably just thinking about where to go. There's no reason for me to not end the game. There's nothing left for me to do. I'm just trying to score a couple points. So everybody at this point gets one more back. One of the players that I talked to that was kind of one of the best coaches said, when you play down 2 trains and someone at the table goes, you've done something right. And the minute I played that 4 train, Loyd went, You don't see me being very happy here, though, because I am still very nervous about my position with Cliff. Cliff looks like he's got longest train here. He's looking pretty cheery there because I think he's feeling pretty good about the circumstances. Yeah. So the thing is, he'll then play a couple more trains to finish here. And then we have this insane final moment here that I think gets downplayed, but I really want to just toot my own horn as we go into this final moment here. Again, I completely misread Rebecca, but I did read Cliff correctly this game. He did have something going on that was a problem for him. And I thought that he wasn't going to make one of his tickets, but maybe he has 3 tickets in his hand. I actually can't tell. But when I look at his score and I look at my score, I literally guessed the value of the ticket that he had and what it was going to look like. So he's got plus 10 points for his longest train there. So that puts him 12 points ahead of me. And my tickets are only worth 16 points. So I need him to only get 4 points in tickets. And I don't think that he's going to make one of his tickets. He's only got 2. I don't think he's going to make one of his tickets. This is minus something. In this case, it ends up being minus 7. Here I am talking out loud about it. And I get the last play of the game here. He's at maybe back. He's 12 points ahead of me. We know now that he's got -7. He's missing one of his tickets. That was roughly my guess, that he missed a ticket that was worth 8-ish points. And so then the question is, I need a 4-point delta to cover. I need him to score fewer than 4 points for me to cover the distance, right? And if that means his other ticket is more than 4 points higher than the ticket that he misses, I'm going to lose. I can decrease that by like a point by playing a train right here and just scoring a point, but it's not going to win. I need to win the game, right? There's the only way to do that is to win the game. I also haven't memorized the tickets. I certainly don't know what my odds are, if they're even non-zero, of me drawing 2 tickets that I've connected on the board already. I suspect that the odds of that are not terribly good, because I've sort of just connected like the west coast to the middle here, which is not terribly far. And I just don't remember seeing very many tickets that go like that. There's kind of these like long zigzag across the country routes, and then things that kind of maybe go like diagonal. It's not a lot of like straight lines west to the middle of the country, if I remember correctly. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I don't think I have him beat. I ask for an audit of the scores, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. We're going through, because I don't want to make this insane decision that I'm about to make without having the points that we're looking at be the points that we're looking at. Because the decision I'm about to make here is to draw tickets off of the deck. And as we go through this audit, we're going to see that we actually, amazingly, every single train on the board is scored correctly. Like, we are where we're supposed to be in terms of what the points are looking like. I do look over at Rebecca. If she's got 35 points here, let's look at this now. She has 35 points here, 5 to 71, up to 101. I would score 16, 82 to 98. So I actually literally think to myself, man, I blocked her. And even if she still has the pieces that I have, she's still going to win. Sure, or she's still going to win over me. I don't know if she's going to win over Cliff, but I don't care. She's going to win over me. That's what matters. So if she has the like 35 points that I've made up in my head, I'm already in trouble. So I say, all right, well, I need to let go of that narrative. There's nothing I can do about her. But it does increase the chance that now I'm not only just worried about Cliff, but I'm worried about scoring a few extra points for Rebecca. So even further, I'm saying I need to draw tickets here or I lose. If I block Cliff, he doesn't have those extra 10 points. This is a non-decision, because Rebecca then has the extra 10 points, and either she's got 35 and just crushes me, or she doesn't, right? I would not if I had blocked Cliff and I had not blocked Rebecca, I would not be making this choice right now. I'd just score the 1 extra point and hope that I misread her tickets, because the gap there is not the 4 points that I'm talking about with Cliff. And her poker face, God, it's so good. I watched this again to be like, I missed something. I could have been able to tell that she was in trouble. Poor Loyd. He knows he's dead. He just has to sit here and suffer while I go play slowly. He's a really nice guy. Quite like him. Everyone at this table was really nice. I was easily the least nice person at this table. There she goes. She breaks. She shakes her head. She knows she's in trouble there. There we go. Maybe she's just bored of listening to me talk out loud, which would be valid. Now we see it. I wonder if I was paying attention to her. I don't think so. I think I knew that it was probably up to Cliff at this point. And I said, let's do it. Miss. 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 I'm dead. Whew. This wasn't the emotion that I had in the moment. I mean, like this sinking feeling that I have here is certainly much more severe in this moment where I'm just like, yeah, that's the end of it. I started this game thinking that I was in very big trouble right from the beginning, just with those like pretty rough tickets. In the middle, was struggling with like not being able to draw sort of the colors that I needed there. And yeah, that was it. I think both of her tickets, by the way, are like 20 points each. So I think she made one and not the other. They ended up canceling out. So I even like underestimated how many points she was going for on her tickets. And she said it when she flips over her card. She's like, I figured like I was playing a game to win. Like I drew these in my starting hand and was like, go big or go home. It just didn't end up working out that way. You see that Loyd here has a bunch of, I mean, all of Loyd's tickets are as many points as my highest point scoring ticket was. But the problem is that he ends up getting blocked from the south. He ends up getting blocked on the East Coast. He just doesn't have enough actions. And if he has like 1, 2, 3 actions more, he connects them, which isn't quite enough, by the way, with the extra ticket that he drew. But maybe the extra ticket that he drew was the one that said that he needed to go to the East Coast there. I actually don't know what the extra ticket that he drew was. And I'm really happy in this moment to watch Cliff score out his points. Because the points that I lost on the ticket that I drew, you know, I took the 7-point ticket or whatever, is that difference right there. So I would have been at, 90, maybe it's an 8-point ticket. I would have been at like 95 to his 99, the 4 points that we were talking about. So I'm very, very proud of the play that I made. There's nothing that I could have done differently except for, read everybody at the table, like mind read everyone at the table, to make sure that block was executed correctly. I don't really have any other regrets about my play. I think that other things to comment on from this game is, I heard that taking tickets is really dangerous, and we just saw how punished Loyd got for doing that. I heard that 6 trains were really good. Cliff and I take most advantage of that, and you see that Cliff comes out on top and I come out in second. And I actually really appreciate that Rebecca made the super bold train play to connect across the country. And imagine how different this game looks if she ends up playing Portland, I end up playing Portland, and Cliff can't connect to Portland anymore. Completely different game. So I'm very glad that I'm the one who kind of jumped and opened that pathway there. If you need something essential, and it's only 1 token, and other players, we were all barking around on that northwest part of the board there. It's something to pay attention to. Brutal to watch, but hopefully fun for you to hear me agonize over this. That was fun. And I'll be off for a few weeks. We got Christmas coming up and everything like that. But I'll probably do one sort of before the end of the year is my goal. And we're running pretty low here on videos left, but we'll get there. And we've got Great Western Trail, which is certainly the one that I'm kind of most excited to talk through. That's a wild game, and I'm the opposite of this game. My emotions in that game are a little bit different than when I watch it. So I was surprised to see the way that some of it played out. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your year if I don't see you before then, and appreciate you for watching. Ciao.